in 2003, we all got to learn that the Iranians actually had this secret program. Right? It became public. And so there was a big international crisis. What is Iran doing? They're secretly trying to make a bomb, etc. And so the Iranians came to the world and said, look, let's make a deal. Right? We will suspend all our nuclear activities, including our uranium enrichment and everything else, and figure out what the future of our nuclear program should look like if you accept the fact that we're entitled to have a nuclear program. And the lead negotiator at that time was a guy called Hassan Rouhani, who is now the president of Iran. But at that time, the Iranians managed to have negotiations with the British, the French, and the Germans, and convinced them that Iran would limit itself to 164 centrifuges and do no more enrichment of uranium until we could resolve diplomatically this issue about their nuclear program. So they were going to suspend all of their nuclear activities at a very low level, way short of anything you would need to make a nuclear weapon, in exchange for international negotiations on a deal to resolve the world's concerns about Iran. So the British agreed, the French agreed, the Germans agreed with the Iranians. Okay, we can do this. You suspend your nuclear program, and we can have diplomacy about what to do next. And the Bush administration said, absolutely not. Absolutely not. The Iranians can't have any nuclear activity. Suspension is not an option, zero. Right? You can't have any nuclear capability of any kind whatsoever. You are part of the axis of evil, nothing. So the first shot we had at a deal 12 years ago, the Bush administration killed it. And instead they imposed sanctions on Iran. They took Iran to the United Nations Security Council and put more sanctions on Iran. And so the Iranians said, okay then, we will do it the hard way. So the Iranians went from 164 centrifuges to 19,000 centrifuges, which is what they had until we got to this deal. Okay? And they built themselves all kinds of nuclear capability, including a new second enrichment facility buried deep under a mountain, just in case somebody wanted to attack it. And so by the time we got to President Obama coming into office, he said, look, I'm willing to talk to the Iranians. But the Iranians were being led by President Ahmadinejad, who thought the West was the great Satan and was not to be negotiated with. And so when Washington wanted to talk, the Iranians didn't want to talk. And then eventually, in 2013, the Iranians had an election. Hassan Rouhani, the previous nuclear negotiator, became the president of Iran. He said, I am ready to negotiate. And within a few months, we had the first deal between Iran and the international community. So it took a change of political leadership in both places to make this deal happen. And the deal was agreed between Iran on the one side and what's called the P5+1, which is the United States and the other permanent members of the Security Council, Russia, Britain, France, and China, plus Germany. And so they first made a deal where Iran would suspend its nuclear activities and there would be agreement on, let's make a deal. But while we're making the deal, you don't do any more nuclear stuff. And the Iranians said, okay, as long as you're sincere about diplomacy, we can do this. So we had the first deal. Then we had a second deal where they agreed on what should be in the final deal, the framework agreement. And then in July, they finally reached a deal. This has been an enormous diplomatic undertaking. I mean, no one can think of anything similar to this that has taken up so much diplomatic energy from the great powers in the world system over such a long time on one issue to try and reach agreement. And they have finally reached agreement. And the United Nations Security Council has unanimously approved and accepted this agreement. Unanimously. And so what we're seeing now and what we've all been struggling with is the weird fact that the only real debate about this deal still in the world is here. And it's because of the Republicans in particular, and the political power of Israel and its allies in the United States in being able to intervene in helping shape the foreign policy of the United States.